What is up, everyone? I hope you're doing fantastic today. This is Raphael Garcia here for episode number 94 of the Let's Talk Wrestling podcast. I want to thank you again, as always, for listening to our content. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe wherever you find us. But for those who may not know, you can check us out in a couple different places. Of course, you can hit us up at MMARatingsNet.com. In both spaces, that is our flagship. And you can check us out there every week. You can hit us up on MMA Ratings Net on Instagram and Twitter. Myself in both spaces at rgarcia_sports. And you can find this platform over at YouTube, MMA Ratings. And you can check us out on various podcasting platforms: Anchor, Breaker, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Overcast, and Spotify. We have quite a bit to talk about today in reference to pro wrestling. You probably will be a AEW heavy show because I want to start there, but that's not all. We will be touching on WWE and the other wrestling action that's going on this weekend over in New Japan and AAA as well. So let's go ahead and jump right into it again. And let's start with AEW first, because they had what will be considered a very successful premiere of Rampage last night in Pittsburgh, and of course the ratings are not out yet. They probably won't be available until Monday, but all early indicators just from a fan and pundit reaction is this was a very it was a successful show from a content standpoint. I will assume that it did more from a numbers standpoint than the two recent editions of AEW Dynamite that were on Fridays, because this was a much stronger card with a lot of stakes that we'll get into. But overall, this 1 hour edition of content was exactly what I think wrestling should be sometimes. It's funny, it will remind you a little bit of what NXT was back when they were an hour before WWE really got their hands into it. But this was a very fast-paced, action-packed show from start to finish. The crowd was ridiculously hot. Much of the commentary going on across Twitter, which is where we kind of watched together, was positive about the show, and there wasn't really anything negative to take away from it. Just some minor bumps that I'll probably touch upon today, but this was a very exceptional show from start to finish. So let's jump right into it. And let's start with that first match where Christian Cage defeated Kenny Omega to become Impact Champion. Now, when this match was announced, a lot of people were kind of confused. Like, why would they do this match now with them being set up for All Out in, 3 weeks? And there's something I'm going to touch upon there with that. But this match first was a very strong match. It was strong in a way that let me know Christian Cage can still keep up. I mean, I'm going to be honest, I've never been one of those people who've been the biggest Christian fan. And even when he was with Edge, I'm not the biggest Edge fan either, but that's another conversation for another day. But Cage shows that he can keep up with these guys going today. And him and Omega had a very strong match. I didn't like the way the referee was distracted for what felt like 5 minutes in that final spot. A chair was thrown into the ring. Omega tries to use it. He is unable to use it. Christian hits the unprettier on the steel chair and pins Omega. I don't know if he's calling that the kill switch now, but whatever. But he hits that and he gets the pin and he takes the Impact titles. And interesting enough, I did not know this. This was his first time becoming Impact Champion because he actually held the NWA titles when he was in TNA. So that's a really interesting trivia point there for Christian's career. This was a huge moment, and I liked how they went right into the promo and the interview section right after that. What does this mean for All Out? There's some speculation that there may be another change for that All Out match. Now, if you go back to Dynamite from this past week, the reaction to Cage being announced to face Omega wasn't really well received. And it wasn't like booed or anything, but the fans responded by chanting yes for Bryan Danielson, whatever you want to call him at this point, and chanting CM Punk's name. So that does not bode well for Cage, because clearly he was not going to win this match. But I'm wondering if there will be another audible call. I don't think so at this time right now. But it's weird to see AEW run an immediate rematch right back, especially with there being there's 2 weeks of show between now and then, 1, 2, 3 actually. So I wonder if something will happen that will switch this show up, because it's already kind of killed a little bit of my need to see this match. They killed a little bit of the momentum with having Cage win, not in a bad way, but I don't need to see this match again right now. Like, I feel like there's a lot of different things that they could do with Omega at All Out. But we know right now that it's leaning towards that'll be CM Punk's first match back. There was a lot of commentary this week about how he's looking in training and how he is looking like he hasn't missed any time off. So, we are in a very interesting position here, and I think that this is going to make a shift for this match. It should be a positive shift. AEW's done a very good job about that over the last 2 years actually. So let's see what happens with this situation, and if it's a positive or negative change. We also had Miro and Fuego del Sol. This was a 3-minute match, and it's exactly what it should have been. Fuego tried to get the momentum going early, and he was doing that until Miro got his hands on him, and when Miro squashes somebody, he squashes them. And watching this match last night made me sit here and think, he might be my favorite person on the AEW roster right now. And that's saying a lot when they have Pac and Ricky Starks and Rey Fenix, people I love. Miro might be my favorite dude right now because he just beats the brakes off of people, and it makes it look so real. Like, you have no business fighting someone who is this size and going like Fuego and I weigh the same amount, 165 pounds. So I know what it's like to grapple and compete against guys who are 100, 200 pounds bigger than you sometimes. But good Lord, Miro made it look like he was going to rip Fuego del Sol in half. I don't know if anyone has seen Suicide Squad this week or last weekend, but the scene where King Shark rips that guy in half, that's basically what Miro could have done to Fuego at any point in this match. So he defeats him with the accolade or whatever he's calling it right now. Fuego taps, but he's still in the ring. And Sammy Guevara and Tony Khan come out, and Fuego immediately looks like he's about to start crying. His mask is all crooked, his mouth's dropped open. So they give him a contract, and he's officially signed to the promotion. I do not think he knew anything about that, because just the look on his face, he looked like he was in shambles, and in the best way you can say that. And that is a fantastic moment to see on live television. It was almost like when Cedric Alexander got signed after his match with Kota Ibushi in the CWC 5 years ago, when fans were chanting for him to get signed, and Triple H came out and basically put his arm around him. That's really what that moment was like. But seeing Fuego get that contract after spending basically the whole pandemic year with them, doing everything that they needed him to do, putting over guys left and right, becoming a fan favorite is fantastic to see that. I don't know. I wonder how old he is. Let me look really quickly. Fuego del Sol cage match. I'm curious to see how old he is, and I mean, he's only 25, so he's gonna be fine. He's gonna be fine. It's good to see. It's good to see someone get that moment in pro wrestling. So that brings us to the main event, where Britt Baker defeated Red Velvet. I cannot talk today. Britt Baker defeated Red, and this was a good match as well. It was really solid. The post-match stuff kind of didn't hit with me, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, but this was good. Red Velvet can hang. She can hang with these women, and she's small, and I made the joke last night that she reminds me of the woman whenever I would go out and there would be like a fight in a club or a big club or whatever, and it's always the smallest woman who's being held back by the biggest bouncer. That's what Red Velvet reminds me of. That's what she wrestles like, and she looks good. She fits in these roles. She's gotten so much better, and I hope that we see more of her. She came into this spot as the quote-unquote heel because they were in Pittsburgh, where Britt Baker is from. So obviously people are going to be cheering for her, screaming her name the whole time, which makes perfect sense. But Red played into that, and she wrestled kind of like the heel, which made perfect sense outside of what happened in the post-match segment. But she performed well in this segment. Britt Baker continues to improve as well in the ring. She is a fantastic character. Her ring work is catching up. I actually am going to see if anyone wants to write a piece about Britt Baker, but I'm starting to question if she's caught up to the horsewomen when it comes to popularity. I'm not saying yes or no, but I think the conversation could be made of whether or not she's caught up to them from a popularity standpoint, because she is over, like super over. And I am a fan of hers to an extent. There's some things I don't like. I mean, I'm a fan of hers. I'm not a fan of how AEW books the rest of the women's division. I'm going to hint on that in a minute when I get down to that section. But these women delivered. The post-match segment, Britt Baker continues to attack Red Velvet, which was weird to me because clearly the fans are going to continue cheering for Britt. So maybe she's just that character where she's just a douchebag, even though fans love her. I'm all right with that. That is, I know people that I enjoy and that I like in my personal life who are dicks sometimes, but I will still cheer them on. And let's be real here, I'm probably one of those people that would get cheered even though still being a dick. I'm not even going to lie. But Britt continues to attack Red Velvet. Chris Statlander, who was in the crowd watching, which I think was a good touch, because it makes it clear that Statlander is next in line, and especially coming off of that win over Nyla Rose on Wednesday. Kristen Statlander comes in, makes a save, and then she gets attacked by Jamie Hayter, who was wearing black gear, the typical "who is this person" attire in pro wrestling. She takes the hood off, takes the people, and you can see her face, but the crowd reaction there wasn't as loud as I think that they wanted it to be, because a lot of people didn't really recognize Jamie Hayter. She only had one match in AEW before the pandemic locked everything down. She's been in the UK. Now she's back. And Jamie Hayter is bricked up. If you follow her on Instagram or Twitter, you can see some of her workouts and you see what she looks like physically. But they had her covered up in a way that you couldn't see her physical strength. That's one thing about Chris Statlander that's like highly publicized, is that she's a big, strong woman. Hayter can match her in power, but they didn't show that with the way she looked or how she was dressed on Friday. I'm sure they'll fix that going forward. But her return kind of fell flat on TV. If you looked at how people responded to it online, much more positivity there. And I'm interested in seeing what they do with her. I'm glad that they did not debut, that Ruby Soho didn't debut in this spot, because I do not want her to be anybody's second. I think she can be a legit name by herself. She does not need to be anyone's heater. And I hope that if that news about her signing to AEW, if it does come to pass, I hope that that's something that she's given an opportunity to do, to be her own woman and to really kind of stand out in that fashion. But all in all, the premiere of Rampage was really good. This hour of wrestling flew by, and that's what's different than WWE content. I saw, or I think maybe Sean Rossap mentioned it on his show, post-show review, that AEW had 1 minute more of in-ring action than SmackDown. SmackDown's an hour longer. Let that sink in. If you let that sink in, that really highlights the differences between the types of content that these two promotions are putting out. AEW is a wrestling promotion that is putting out wrestling content for wrestling viewers and fans. WWE is a sports entertainment content that, as Vince said, they're trying to make movies, they're trying to do other shit, and they're not giving people a lot of wrestling. That's one of the big complaints about their platform. So it's really interesting to kind of see the two, to see between the two there. the big title switch at the start of the show made it clear that this should be appointment viewing every week. I don't know if I'm even going to stand by that because Fridays are typically the day that I can really go out because I work some Saturdays. So I'm not sure if I'm going to stay in to watch 3 hours of pro wrestling. You can barely get me to stay in to watch 2 hours. And SmackDown's been on for much longer. You can barely get me to stay in and watch that. So to expect me to stay in and watch another hour of Rampage might be a little bit difficult, but I can guarantee you people are going to make it a point to watch. I'm making it a point to watch next week because that's the one at the United Center in Chicago. Obviously, the CM Punk rumors are what's really driving that show. And it's almost, to be honest with you, if AEW didn't deliver CM Punk at the United Center or at All Out, that blowback is going to be something interesting to see. People are already looking for reasons to detract against AEW at any point in time. Same thing with WWE on the other side of the equation. It's stupid. We all know. We all talk about it. But that would be a big blunder. Something's going to happen next week on Rampage, and I think that everyone should be prepared to watch and enjoy that show. I wanted to touch upon really quickly the conversation about diversity and inclusion in AEW. It's a topic that's being hit on a lot on social media. Maybe it's just because I follow a lot of black men and women who watch wrestling. Maybe that's why, but this is being talked about a lot, and it's not necessarily in the most glowing of fashion with AEW. And I wrote about this week on Daily DDT, so you can go and see the content there. You can catch me over at Twitter at rgarcia_sports. You can find the piece there that I promoted out, or you can go over to Daily DDT at Fansided DDT and catch it there. I'm not going to go into the full piece. I wrote 1,000 words about this topic, but AEW doesn't have a diversity problem. They have an inclusion problem. There's a difference between the two. Diversity is what you see when you look at the crowd and you see a bunch of people from a bunch of different backgrounds. Not just about race, gender, sexual orientation. Obviously, race plays a part in that. Nationality plays a part in that as well too. AEW has that part. They have a lot of different Latinos and Hispanics from different parts of the world. They do have black people on their roster. They do have non-conforming people on their roster from a gender aspect as well too. They have that, but the utilization of them is where they're struggling. That inclusion piece of that. And what I mean is, if you watch AEW Dark and AEW Dark Elevation, that's where you see a lot of the black and brown faces. That's where Red Velvet, for example, went on a 7-match win streak, and where she got all of her wins from. She had one on one of those Friday Dynamites as well over Bunny, I think. But outside of that, everything else was on Dark and Dynamite, or excuse me, Dynamite and Dark and Dark Elevation. Hikaru Shida held the women's title for 372 days, carried the women's division through the pandemic, and was a pillar for AEW during the pandemic. She loses the belt to Britt Baker on May 30th, and she has not been seen on Dynamite since. That is a glaring issue to me. A glaring issue, because she's just out of sight, not necessarily out of sight, out of mind, but they haven't even mentioned her on Dynamite since. Scorpio Sky has not had a singles match on Dynamite since March. He was one half of the first tag team champions. They lose the titles, take them out of the tag team title picture, or the tag team picture, heat him up on Dark and Dynamite to lose 2 shots at the TNT Championship, put him right back in the tag team. Ethan Page is the focal point of that tag team. Scorpio Sky has not been on television since. Dynamite is their premiere show. That's the show that drove 1 million plus viewers for 4 straight weeks. This week they had 989. I think it was 989 was the number. They're doing numbers on that show. However, black and brown people are not successfully included in that show. They may have matches, but they lose. Look at Lee Johnson. Lee Johnson was built up to go face against Miro, get squashed. Well, I'm not gonna say squashed. He has some moments in that. But who knows when's the next time we'll see him on either one of those shows. Thunder Rosa's all elite now. Haven't seen or mentioned her on Dynamite. Thunder Rosa and Big Swole have wins over Britt Baker. Neither one of them have been on Dynamite talking about that. That's my concerns about Red Velvet. She picked up, she had that great match against Britt Baker last night. Hopefully, it's not another 5 months before we see her on Dynamite or Rampage again. AEW does have an inclusion problem. I understand the promotion is only 2 years old, but they do have an inclusion problem when it comes to elevating single males, black males on their roster, and allocating enough time to the women's division. Hell, you can say the same thing about Latino men as well, because you have Andrade and Kenny Omega wrestling this weekend, and they didn't even mention the match at all. They wrestled tonight. So the solution, obviously, is to work around that and look at how they're including their men and women on Dynamite. That's not a difficult situation there. But, I mean, it's what they've been doing. And the reason why they're getting criticized for this is because Cody Rhodes made it a point to talk about the fact that AEW was going to be a diverse and included roster. They were going to make sure he did all these talking sprees about diversity and inclusion and the importance of it. AOC was tweeting him. I wrote multiple pieces about this. Other people at Daily DDT did as well. But they're not living up to the expectations that they created, and that's why people are coming for them. Is it a little bit extreme sometimes? Some of the shit people be saying is just stupid, but it's funny, but it's just stupid sometimes. But there is a conversation here. Go check my piece out about that, but there's definitely a conversation that needs to be held about diversity and inclusion when it comes to AEW. We're going to flip over to WWE now and talk about some of the stuff going on there, starting off with Keith Lee first. And I am sure everyone saw the video he released on Friday, maybe it was Friday, about his health condition and what he was struggling with, what he was really struggling with. Because as you know, he was on television up through like January, and then he was off and he just returned. He had COVID, as he said in his videos, and he also was dealing with heart inflammation, and he could have died. He basically said he could have died. And this is the reason why this is so disturbing to me is because if you go back and look at the way people were talking about him and Mia Yim during that time, it's sad. It's so sad that that's the way wrestling Twitter as a whole reacts. That level of toxicity is stuff that you see in both the video games industry and the comic books industry. You see it in MMA, and it's just frustrating. It's stupid. At the end of the day, it's stupid, and it doesn't need to be an everyday thing. Leave people's private lives alone. He actually kind of hinted at that. He said it outright in the video that he didn't appreciate the way people were talking about Mia Yim, saying that it was her fault, et cetera, when it wasn't. It was just nasty, and this is the reason why journalism within professional wrestling is not necessarily taken seriously because of shit like that. And I understand exactly what he said. So I wrote a piece about that, but go watch the video. He tweeted it out yesterday. It just wasn't a good look for the way people were behaving when it came to his whole situation. So prayers out to Keith Lee. I hope he is healthy. I hope he's fully recovered and that he continues to recover over time. Now let's touch on NXT a bit. So there were some good developments over on NXT, and I know this past week it feels like everything's been a blur. but there's a lot of news about the way NXT's hiring practices are changing, and the focus of NXT will be changing as well. No more small guys, as it's been said. Wrestling, it'll be bigger guys, and yeah, that's a statement all of its own. And the expected hiring practices are supposed to be changing. So there's concerns about that around the women as well too. This was a good show though for NXT. Dakota Kai and Sarai had a great match. I know some people were upset about Sarai losing her undefeated streak, but I feel like this was an okay time to do it because Dakota Kai is being built up as a title contender. And I think that that's the right way to go because she needs to be booked very strongly for that match against Raquel. And it's an opposite. It's actually interesting because it's an exact inverse of what occurred in the main event. But that was a really good match, and I expect to see Sarai at the top of the card eventually for NXT in that women's division. I'm wondering what happened with Ember Moon because she was supposed to be in that match, but she was pulled from the last minute. So I'm hoping she's okay. It was Sean Ross Sapp said she wasn't cleared, so we'll see what goes on from there. Gigi Dolan, the former Priscilla Kelly, she had a good match as well. She picked up a win. I'm looking forward to seeing more of her over time. She is paired alongside of Mandy Rose and JC Jane, which, again, I don't know too much about JC, but let's see what she looks like in the ring. Mandy Rose has improved over time. I mean, obviously, no one was really, impressed with her main roster run, which they shouldn't be, but she does have she definitely has grown over the last 6 to 7 years. I think that she's been in WWE, so let's see what really happens with that in the future and if she continues to improve in those areas. But I am all about seeing as much of Gigi Dolan as possible. Odyssey Jones, LA Knight, and Boa pick up squash victories. I am a little concerned with the end of the breakout tournament because I thought that Carmelo Hayes was a lock to win it, but again, if they're focusing on big men, he may not beat Duke Hudson next week. And if he doesn't, that really says a lot to me because Duke Hudson, the former Brandon Vink, was really loved when he was on the main roster. And he has a great look. He's a big man. He reminds me a little bit of Wade Barrett. But I wanted to see Carmelo and Trey Baxter have a hell of a match at the end, but that's not how it's going to go down. So let's see. Odyssey Jones is looking good coming out of the breakout tournament, though. So let's see what's next for him. I right now my money's on him to win it. Pete Dunne defeated Ilya Dragunov, and this is what I meant about the inverse from the Dakota Kai match that started the show. Ilya Dragunov is competing against Walter at NXT TakeOver 36, and that match, there's a lot of anticipation about that match based on how the first one went. The first one, if you have not seen it, go back and watch that match. It is exceptional wrestling. The spotlight is shining brighter on them this time. Why? So, and I understand that Pete Dunne is being booked very strongly, as he should be, because Pete Dunne is awesome. He can be the future of this promotion. Why book this match if you don't want to pin Pete Dunne, but you have Dragunov having a match the next pay-per-view? They could have threw Oni Lorcan's ass in this match here and had Dragunov win, still get the heat on Walter, and still have the same ending. It just doesn't make any sense. Dunne and Dragunov put on a show. It was a great match, but again, Dragunov did not have to lose here. They could have booked around that, put Oni Lorcan in that spot, give him a victory, and move him in the right direction towards TakeOver 36. Touching on a couple other topics within the WWE, Candice LeRae and Johnny Gargano announced their first child. Congrats to them. Candice LeRae is, like I wrote about it, she's the gift that keeps on giving. She is, in my opinion, one of the top 5 best women in the in the WWE roster, period. and I wish she got her singles run as a champion. I hope she still does, but she has a lot to give to this industry, and she really deserves a lot of praise for her hard work. Elias seems like he's getting a character change. On Monday Night Raw, they did a segment where he strummed his guitar one last time and threw it in the fire. I'm interested in seeing more because Elias was over at one point in time and WWE fucked it up. So I'm looking for a character change from him. He looks good. He looks the part. His in-ring is okay. It can get better, but I would like to see something different from Elias, so hopefully we get something good here. Damian Priest is super over. And I didn't really realize that. Like, I kind of did, but didn't. But, man, he is super over. They have someone who could be a champion here. And I am not sure how they're going to get there. I could live for a Damian Priest versus Bobby Lashley segment. I could live for that. I could watch that. They have him going up against Sheamus for the United States title at SummerSlam in a couple weeks. 2 weeks? 1 week, actually. That's next week. So hopefully he wins that match. But the issue is I don't need to see any more rematches. I don't need to see any more of those. You know we're going to get like a month more worth of them once he does defeat Sheamus. But Damian Priest is super over, and I like that guy. I wasn't a fan of his at first, but he's got it. He's got it. And speaking of someone who's got it, Sasha Banks pissed people off this week, and I'm totally here for it because she said that she doesn't believe she's ever had a bad match, that she's only had 5-star bangers, and you know what? I'm here for that. She was talking to Wrestling with Brandon F. Walker, and she said, I always make history. Let's be honest, all my matches deliver. All my matches are good. All my matches are 5 stars. It makes no difference if it's WrestleMania, a live event, Friday Night SmackDown. It's no difference. That's why I'm Sasha Banks. They're all 5 stars because I'm in them. And then she laughed. People, took that as what they would usually do. And started arguing about that. You know how the mentions get, but Sasha Banks delivers. She consistently delivers, and I'm here for it. I'm here for her pissing people off like that. I'm here for her making people mad because she says stuff like that. Because you know what, Sasha Banks knows how to move the meter, and she continuously does that. I'm a fan of it. So I'm here for it all day, every day, because I do believe she is one of the best 3 women in the industry right now. So that's everything from the 2 main shows this week. I want to hit on real quick about TripleMania. As I mentioned, that's this weekend. AEW failed by not talking about this match between... It's 2 AEW contracted wrestlers competing in Mexico for the AAA Mega's title. Kenny Omega versus Andrade. I expect Andrade to win, especially after what happened last night, and they can't have Omega beating Andrade already. So I'm guessing that's kind of why they didn't talk about it, because they didn't want to draw a lot of attention to this match going on. But I expect Andrade to win. You can't actually even watch this card in America live. You have to find like a illegal stream for it. I won't be doing that tonight. I'll probably watch it later on this weekend. Deonna Purrazzo is also on the card in a title versus title match against Fabi Apache. I expect her to win that match because I couldn't see TNA or Impact sending her down there to lose. So that card is tonight. Also tonight, New Japan Resurgence. They have a hell of a card. Lance Archer versus Tanahashi. Jay White versus David Finlay. The Good Brothers against Jon Moxley and a surprise partner. Ishii versus Moose, and Leo Rush is returning. A bunch of other matches as well too. You can find that over, I think, on New Japan World, which is where that will be held. But there's a lot of good wrestling going on, folks. A lot of good wrestling, and that's what's making this time so exciting. If you're a wrestling fan, you can find something to enjoy and something to get behind, and it's not really that hard. A lot of good content that is out there. So with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and close the show out. I'm going to get on the road. I got to go see my mom today for the first time since the COVID-19 pandemic has hit the country and the world. So it should be fun. But as always, I want to thank you everybody for taking the time to listen to the show. As always, you can find our content across multiple platforms at MMA Ratings. You can hit me up at MMA Ratings, at rgarcia_sports on Instagram and Twitter. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe whenever you see this show or any of our other content anywhere else. Thank you everyone for taking the time to listen to this show, and I appreciate you all. Have a great and safe weekend.